On today's IRS tax update, we'll take a look at new developments on the remaining backlog of unprocessed tax returns and the bad news released by the IRS impacting those still waiting for their returns to be processed. From there, we'll check in on the status of those amended tax returns and move on to those ongoing tax refund delays many of you are experiencing, as well as recap some of those IRS notices being received by taxpayers in the mail. For those of you still waiting on your tax returns to be processed, we did get some news out of the IRS where we saw the biggest increase of unprocessed tax returns in one update since earlier this year, with the backlog now back to over 1 million left, as there are now 900,000 e-file returns and 113,000 paper returns remaining. Now, typically in pre-2020 years, this number would be about half of what it currently is, so that shows you how far the IRS is still behind. The main reason we're seeing these numbers rise is mid-October was a tax filing extension deadline, so we're seeing a rush of new returns being submitted, and yes, there are going to be those who filed recently who are going to have their returns processed and refunds issued before many of you have been waiting for months. If you're waiting on your amended tax return to be processed, not much good news to report there as well, as the IRS has only had a net decrease of 2,000 amended returns processed over a 2-week period, which is pretty bad. Again, what is happening here is amended returns continue to be received by the IRS on a daily basis, so the IRS is just not able to catch up. In the last month, the IRS has only managed to process less than 20,000 amended returns per week, whereas in previous months they were averaging on course to 40,000 returns. So for those of you still waiting, you're going to be looking at 6 to 7 months minimum. However, it is common for some to wait over 1 year for their amended return, especially if the IRS requests documentation during processing. Now, if you're still experiencing delays, one of the likely causes for your delay is your tax return has been set aside for further examination or even audit. For those of you who e-filed, especially you've been waiting at least 2 months, this is one of the top reasons for your delay, possibly. If you claimed EITC or CTC in particular and have been waiting, the probability of this being the cause greatly increases. However, it is possible, especially if the IRS does not have your current address on file, that you may not even be aware this is the cause of your delay in the first place, so make sure to look for those 971 codes on your tax transcripts, which represents when the IRS sends out notices to you in the mail. Often during an audit, the IRS will request documentation and will need that to continue processing. If they do not receive it, they'll eventually reject your credit on a certain claim. Other causes of audits include large math errors, which really are data entry errors. Usually smaller ones the IRS can automatically resolve. However, larger ones will definitely trigger the attention of the IRS and will need to be justified. And another common reason is failing to report some income. You may have worked on a job for a couple of days and completely forgot about it while never receiving a W-2 or 1099, and when the IRS goes to process your taxes, they discover the income you reported does not match what they received from employers or former employers, and that will trigger further review by the IRS and cause substantial delays potentially. The other main reason for those delays is the IRS still needs to process your employer's wage information, and one sign of that for those being impacted is receiving a 60-day notice like seen here in the mail. Either the IRS has simply not processed your employer's wage information yet, so they can match what you reported as wages versus what your employer filed under wages. There could be different reasons, such as your employer has entered the wrong Social Security number, which is very common, or they've not submitted their last 2022 quarterly wage statements. Make sure to log in your IRS account and check your wages and income transcript to make sure that your wages match versus what you reported down to the dollar on your tax returns. And if nothing appears there, check your earnings record on your online Social Security account. The IRS may request you to submit a copy of your W-2 and pay stubs so that they can continue processing a return, so make sure to have those available. Need to complete ID verification even at this point in the year is still a main reason why some refunds have not been released, and can be a problem for some, especially if they never received a notice like seen here in the mail to complete the process. If you're impacted by this, simply going on the IRS website and verifying your identity through ID.me is only the first step. You must also verify your tax return, and both steps need to be completed in order for that refund to be released. The only way to confirm if this is the cause of your refund delay is either by contacting the IRS or taxpayer advocate, and if it is, you need to make sure that IRS notice is reissued to you immediately, because there's information such as a control number that you will need to complete the process. Moving on to those IRS notices being reported by our viewers, starting off with the CP05 Notice like seen here. Now, this letter will indicate the IRS received the tax return and is verifying income, tax withholding, among other possible items. The IRS will request specific documentation relating to income, such as pay stubs, to verify the amount you earned on your taxes is actually correct, also possibly a letter from your employer verifying such information, or it could be issued documentation request for information that you reported on your Schedule C of your taxes if you filed a Schedule C. These documents must be submitted before the IRS can continue processing of your return and ultimately the release of that tax refund. The notice being received is a CP75 notice. Now, these are being received in particular by those claiming EITC. You must respond to this notice and provide all documentation needed, otherwise, the IRS will reject the credit being claimed, such as EITC or CTC. We've had multiple viewers receive this notice and had to respond. Also, as a reminder, you must have worked in order in the last tax year to claim EITC. If you have not, you're not entitled to this credit and it will be rejected. Let us know in the comments section below about your ongoing tax issue. In the meantime, we'll keep monitoring the situation for further developments, so make sure to click on the thumbs up and subscribe button below for future updates on this channel, and thanks for watching.